Get your day started right. From our shack to yours, this is Coffee and Ham Radios. We are live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, we
froze up again.
live.
Oh, Tumblr Club.
There we go. Morning,
Tumblr
boys.
Club.
And looks like something happened to Chuck over there. Huh?
Just in time, yeah. What y'all drinking this morning?
Coffee. Wawa. Dark roast.
I got me some Earl Grey.
I got some Coke Zero going.
Branching
I'm not
out.
supposed to be drinking that. But,
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Why not?
You going
Why
for your Picard theme?
Yeah, I was getting rid of
Exactly.
cutting soda out altogether. Just going with drinking iced tea to get my caffeine
Oh, that's
in.
crazy talk. That's crazy
Yeah,
talk.
I did pretty good. I went about a month or so, and then I fell victim to drinking a Coke again, and it sucks, but it tastes so good. I love it. And,
Yeah, that's right. I stopped cold turkey one time drinking caffeine. OMG. I could hear color. I could taste
Yeah,
the rainbow.
I bet I couldn't imagine functioning without caffeine.
You get a horrible headache as you come off of it. And I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
It goes slow, man.
yeah.
Don't want to suffer
I
no
just gave it up and went
withdrawals.
back to what I was doing,
You got to wean yourself
Which
off,
was...
drinking sodas.
I mean, you ain't lying.
Oh, I could do that. I totally will do that. I ain't scared.
Mainlining.
Yeah, I would totally do that.
It looks like the Chuck gang is out in full force. He's looking fine this morning.
Give us a shout out in the chat. Let us know what you're drinking. If you got your Team Tumblr on.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So we were going to cover a couple of things
Yeah.
and get into into our battery conversation. One of our ham bros, Scott at Ham Radio for Non-Techies, he's in the chat, so we're glad to see him here. He was in a little bit of a car accident, and I believe we got Jason set up a GoFundMe to help Scott out. So we'll post a link to that in the chat should you have any extra cash laying around. But Scott, everybody's wishing you well, and hope you feel better, bro.
Yeah, no doubt.
The
Press, Darjeeling. I like it. We're all over the
yeah,
map.
the other thing we were going to mention, down in your neck of the woods, James, there's been a little bit of adverse weather, right?
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 tornadoes in northeast Mississippi last night, north and northeast Mississippi. And Joseph Brett lives down yonder way. Actually, it's up yonder from me. And it was pretty serious. There were some fatalities out of the tornadoes. I talked to him. I called him this morning on the Ham Shack hotline and spoke to him. And he said they were, that sun is killing me. I'm going to have to fix that because it's like driving me nuts. There's like
Yeah,
a
I was wondering
sunbeam.
what was going on over
Yeah.
there. I wasn't going to say anything, but
Or my character's coming apart in real time. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so
going out.
he said they actually were sheltering last night. One passed north of him and south of them, and they're good. Everybody's fine. And apparently the sheriff's office was fairly busy last night, and I imagine their fire department was too. But
so I can see Joe Bretchen now, like when he's got to make the decision to shelter, he's probably like, shoot, man, runs out to the Ham Shack and grabs his 7300 and his amp.
grabs the radio gear.
Right,
That's
gets him down the hatches.
That's
them
right.
But
You kids, come on with me. You can carry this radio crap.
Yeah. Each grab one.
Yeah, and it's no joke. I mean, so like even if you have some of this weather in your area, you shelter in place and everything's over, you sometimes have problems getting power back online, especially in more rural places. It can take a long time. Today we're talking a lot about batteries for ham radio, and we're going to hopefully cover stuff from, hey, what's a good battery for me to operate portable QRP, all the way through, hey, what are battery options or power options for my Ham Shack? And we'll probably even talk a little bit about extending those beyond your Ham Shack for emergency power type situations. I think that in the future, we're talking about things that are happening globally across the flat earth that are going to be driving up the price of energy. And it's just a good idea to start to educate folks and themselves about energy independence, right? So it's not just operating in ham to go play Parks on the Air. It's around education for energy independence. But before we do that, let's just do our quick roundtable. So I didn't know, James, if you had anything you wanted to cover up, talk about.
Yeah, I will be posting a video later this afternoon because I was entirely too lazy to get it done last night. But I'll be putting up a video today that's in line with the topic we're covering this morning. So it's going to dovetail together. It also will dovetail with the stream that Steve and did last Sunday. That you did last Sunday with your battery thing.
Battery work, yeah.
Yeah, battery work. So it's all about the batteries.
Battery.
Yeah, and I think that we'll probably collectively have some more of those. Like Chuck, you just had a battery video, didn't you?
I just did. Yeah, I did a 300 amp hour for my motorhome and did a test on it. And
300.
yeah,
It's ginormous.
Well,
Muy
you know what it is?
macho.
My motorhome has 3 like 100-watt batteries in it, and this replaces all 3 of those.
100 amp?
in one piece. They're all 100 amp hour.
Yeah, you said watt. I was like, okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, amp hour.
You gonna run a laptop for a
Just
minute?
Froze again. Sorry, guys.
What is the freezing, man?
I'm getting some internet. Internet problems here. I think
It's
Windows.
It's the Camlink, the Elgato one. It does this It just goes through this phase where it works for like months and then just freezes up. But I'll
I'm
change
not
it
a
just
fan of
second here.
Elgato.
I bought the cheap Chinese ones.
I tell you what, the picture on it is better than the cheap Chinese ones, but the cheap Chinese ones never seem to not work. So
Right?
that's
Right.
The last one I got was
I think my
supposedly an
internet's
upgraded one.
flaking out.
It is.
You look fine. I mean, you froze once or twice, a couple, for just, a short time.
What-
But
Well, I'm seeing everybody hang a little bit or time out, and I don't know if it's me or if it's y'all. Maybe TikTok. Maybe everyone's watching TikTok or something like that.
it could be. Maybe we should watch a TikTok
There's some
StreamYard
internet
hacks
shortage going
video
on
about
right
how
now.
to do it. Yeah.
StreamYard shortage.
StreamYard did make a change a couple of days ago, and ever since then, something's been weird on my side too. I don't know what's going on, but could be
There
better.
we go, and I guess it's starting early. It's time to dance.
Yes, Radioactive Ryan, welcome.
I'm dancing, really I am.
Thank you very much.
Come on, Chuck, throw it up in the air. Dance like no one can see you. Because they can't.
He needs some milk.
Poor Chuck.
Thank you, Radioactive Ryan.
Yeah, appreciate it, Ryan, a lot.
Keeps the lights on for us.
So now the Chuck dropped out. Everything seems to be much better.
It's kind of what I
blame
was
Chuck.
thinking.
There we go. All right. Well, we have some content that we're going to share, and let's
Hopefully.
go ahead and put that up, and we'll start the party. So what I put here was that batteries at a high level. So we're going to talk about, and we're talking about rechargeable batteries. We're not talking about primary batteries that you buy, you run down, and then you throw in the trash. But the thing is that trying to buy the right battery can be confusing, and it can be a daunting task because there's a lot of things that you need to consider. They come in multiple chemistries, and we got to dance. You got it, James.
I got it.
A Chuck error message this morning.
That's probably what he's hearing.
He needs some milk.
Steve, thank you.
Steve. Much appreciated. There's a bunch of different chemistries when you talk about batteries, and then prices can vary wildly. Like you can look at a 10 amp hour battery from manufacturer A, and then look at a 10 amp hour battery from manufacturer B, and one can be 10 times the order of magnitude when it comes to price. We'll talk a little bit about what feeds into that, and then let's not forget the math when determining how much battery is needed. And that's a little bit of a So in some videos that you'll watch, people talk about battery capacity, and they're like, well, this one lasted me 10 hours. Well, that doesn't really mean anything because that 10 hours you could have been doing something differently than I would be doing for that 10 hours. And it wouldn't last me that 10, or it may last me 12. So there's some conversation there as well.
We could microwave some hamburgers and ruin a couple of different things, the batteries included, but the microwave will wear it down fast. It's a 1,000-watt microwave,
Right.
It'll wear it down real fast. Whereas listening to a QRP radio, you could take months to wear that battery down.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And just listening is a whole lot different than transmitting.
Could you imagine how long I could go on a QRP with my 300 amp hour? Couple weeks, month.
All
Well, with the drift on that Yaesu, I don't know how long it'd last.
It's an ICOM 705. You're right.
Oh, okay. I don't
Is that
have
the
one.
ELAD
I
this
don't,
time.
I don't have one.
You don't
I
have
got
that.
the
I thought
E-Lab.
you had
I've got-
705.
No,
I have-
sir. I'm the only ham in the world, I think, that did not buy into
gonna
that
say.
thing.
Yeah, you're missing
You're
out.
missing out, bro.
No, not so much. Me and my Flex and my
that's right. You don't
7610
go
are happy.
outside.
So,
I'd
Chuck,
sit
you-
outside
you,
occasionally.
you just went from sealed lead acid batteries in your camper, right, to a lithium ion, and so
Yeah, so I
maybe
went
you could
from-
talk a little about that.
Well, doing that, I went from they say that you get 50% out of lead acid, right? So I went from
Yep.
300 amp hours to a usable of only 150 roughly, right? And then with the sorry, I'm moving things here. With the lithium, they say you can use 100%, but I also hear 20%. Somebody said that in my video, but I went to what the battery management system would handle to the bottom of it, and it went over 300 amp hours.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that all that would be totally usable on certain things because the voltage drops off at the end there quite a bit. But it was took 22 hours with about 15 amps pulling from the battery. So about 22 hours to run it down.
Well, I
The
think
biggest draw I have in my motorhome is my heater fan, because
Sure.
we camp in the sun. We camp in the winter a lot for dirt bike riding because it's not so dusty. And the place we go is like 20 to 25 degrees at night a lot of times. And we turn the heat. What I usually do is I start my generator. This is a way to, if you're camping with the RVs and stuff, to help your batteries. If it's colder and your heater's going to run, you start your generator and get your motorhome kind of warmed up really good, and then turn the heat down. And then it doesn't come on for a while. And I've been noticing that I'd run my batteries down to nothing. And that's the other thing that I like, that I think is going to be good, because the management system will cut your battery off on a lithium.
Mm-hmm.
Your lead acid just goes to zero if you have a draw someplace, like leave a light on or something and you don't know it.
Well, if you overcharge
think-
the lead acid, you can damage those batteries, right?
Yeah, well, I think all of them, but I don't think the management, if it's any good, I guess keeps you from doing that, right?
With
Yeah.
lithium, yeah.
Yeah, some batteries you can actually set the BMS to say, hey, 10.5 or 10 volts or something like that. Stop producing energy, and the BMS will handle that. And you were also
Right.
talking about the cold. Some BMSs will have, and so we talk about the price of batteries. More expensive ones will have low temperature charge protection and low temperature protection in general, where you can't charge or discharge a battery at a certain temperature. And then a
Right.
lot of them will also have high cutoff. You don't typically see that at lead acid batteries, but I don't know if it's as big of a problem, right? Because a lot of times we use lead acid batteries in cars, right? And
I think the only, I mean, coming from a cold place, I don't remember. The only thing I remember about lead acid batteries is they will not hold up as well under load in seriously cold weather.
Yeah. And then the lithium
They'll
batteries,
They'll run down faster, I think is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, their lithium batteries are like half the weight, the physical weight.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, at least.
that's the other thing. I was using a Group 31 is like a diesel battery, but it's also considered an RV type battery. For some reason, I don't understand why, but one of those batteries that I had before is about the same weight as my full 300 amp hour lithium.
Yeah, that's
They're
crazy,
both
right?
about like 60, 70 pounds. And I tell you what, the lithium's got the nice PVC cover on them and stuff, and it looks clean. I don't know how. I mean, mine's in an area where some of the weather from the tires and stuff gets to it, but
Well, the one of the things that I've never encountered is corrosion on the terminals of a lithium battery, like you get on an SLA or an AGM. And one of the things you need to do is, in terms of maintenance, right, is you need to check your lead batteries, and make sure that there's corrosion-free connections on there, because that corrosion can impede your flow of energy and cause you
Totally.
problems.
Yep.
James is talking a little bit about the glass matte batteries versus sealed lead acid, and the glass matte batteries, you can actually use them on their side. I don't know about upside down, but you can get a little more creative with your installation of those.
yeah.
They're definitely a better option.
They're also suggested for solar, and I've been doing just regular lead acids for solar, and they last about 4 years. That's another thing, is price.
Well, one of the things is, dang on, that made me make me
Sorry.
confused and forget what I'm talking about, and that's okay. One of the first batteries that I got was an AGM. It was actually I bought a wheelchair battery for electronic wheelchair, and sometimes they call them deep cycle batteries versus like a cold cranking amps battery. So hams a lot of times will say, "Hey, I've got a spare truck battery out in the garage.
Right.
Can I use that?" And the answer is, yeah, you can use it.
You can, yeah.
But it
works
doesn't
just fine.
deliver that constant voltage over a long period of time. Like they're really made more for a high, quick burst of energy,
Right.
Not a consistent draw, and they'll die a little bit faster than like a deep cycle. Sometimes they call marine batteries because out on boats and stuff, you don't have an alternator out there. I'm assuming. I don't know. Is there any
You
guys
do.
know about?
You do. It's a gas engine in a boat. That's all.
Yeah. The other,
big money.
I was going to say, never mind. I'll think of it in a second. Oh, the starting battery thing. Also, they're not made to run down all the time.
Right.
You'll run your starting battery a lot faster than you will an RV or marine type battery.
A house
They're
battery.
made to discharge. They're made to discharge. And
Yeah.
your starting battery is made to start and then charge back.
So, like I was saying, I had a lead battery. And it was a 30 amp hour battery at 50% capacity, which is what I would typically run it at. I usually get about 15 amps of power. So, Chuck, you were talking about the weight difference between 100 amp hour lead and 100 amp hour lithium, and it being around 1/3 to 1/2. But really, when you do the comparison, if you're going to compare the usable energy, it's 100 amp lithium to a 200 amp lead, and then even that delta in weight is more significant there.
Right.
So like this wheelchair battery I had was like the size of a car battery, and I get almost the same amount of usable energy out of this small Bioenno battery. So this Bioenno battery is what I would use if I was setting up off grid, right? Whether it was in the backyard or whether it was at the park or whatever it is.
Grid down.
Yeah, and a grid down.
Grid
And
down.
I think that when you talk about ham radios, the creme de la creme, the Cadillac of batteries is the Bioennos, right?
They get the most PR.
To get the
That's
most
a fact.
PR, yeah.
I will go with that.
And they are expensive, and I think that part of the conversation is that they have a very clean BMS in terms of generating RF. So sometimes with cheaper BMS, and we're probably making an assumption here. BMS is your battery management system. So with a battery like this is really multiple batteries in here, and they're wired either in series or parallel. Sometimes it's both. To get us to a certain voltage, and the battery management systems to make sure that they all charge and discharge evenly across the battery pack. And we'll talk a little bit about series and parallel in a few minutes. But Bioenno does a really fantastic job of that. But sometimes those battery management systems, or BMS, can produce RF and they can produce noise. So that's when you hear people say, "Man, this is a noisy battery." It means that it's impacting their ability to do HF communications. And Bioenno's got a very, very good track record of not causing problems like that.
I've never seen any noise from any of my batteries.
Yeah,
I've got-
same here.
it's
I have,
one
and
of
I
the
have,
cheapest ones you can buy.
I have a
Miatis.
Chins 100 amp hour and 3 Miatis,
Right.
or as Ape says, my ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a Bioenno, and I've never had any racket come out of any of the BMSs on any of
At
them.
least I've never noticed it. I've got probably 4 or 5 different types of lithium batteries with management stuff. But I'm sure there's some out there.
Yeah, Todd's saying that Dakota Lithium has the best PR when you get out of the ham space. Even in the ham space,
Oh, they
Dakota
do.
Lithium's really popular.
Or
get into-
Battleborn, just because
you
the
get
name
into-
sounds so cool.
Well, you get into trolling motors and stuff. Dakota Lithium, man, they're like all over that stuff.
Yeah. So Dave's saying, what are the safest batteries? So any battery in the hands of an equipped person can cause a problem, right? Like if you do something silly. But I think what they're saying, lithium iron phosphate is generally the safest battery. Or, it's probably lead. Lead acids are probably the safest. But in terms of lithium, it's probably the lithium iron phosphate. They don't have some of the problems that the lithium carbon cobalt manganese batteries had, or lithium cobalt, or the lithium
RC
manganese.
cars and stuff.
I
RC,
think the
yeah,
lithium
RC
manganese
batteries are
probably
lithium
most
polymer.
dangerous.
They're lipo. They are dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't trust them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like little tiny fire bombs waiting to go off. Don't cancel us, YouTube. It was part of the explanation.
That's right.
Yeah, I've had a lithium battery discharge or vent, and it's scary. You know what I mean? Like once the chemical reaction starts, there's little you can do to stop it.
I've seen lead acid batteries that I was afraid to take apart or take loose that were, shorting out inside. Oh yeah, I've had one blow
and
up.
they have vents. They have vents on them, right? So they can let some of the gas out. But like a battery like this is an Ampere Time. And Ampere Time just changed their name to Lead Time. So I don't understand why these companies are constantly changing their names. You know what I mean? Like you would think that they get good branding, and then all of a sudden they change their names.
Is that LEE time or LEAD time?
It's LI time.
Lithium iron time,
I
guess.
don't know how you get lead time out of that.
No, lithium time.
Yeah, but so the thing is like this doesn't have the ability to vent. So if something were to happen to these battery cells in a sealed container like this, because there is no discharge port.
And I don't know the exact details on lithium iron phosphate LiFePOs. Like Chuck was talking about, and I mentioned LiPo, LiPo chemistry is the one that I'm worried about, and that's what you see in drone batteries and RC cars and planes and stuff like that.
LiFePO's that's like a bioenno.
No,
LiFePO 4 is a bioenno.
LiFePO is like a bioenno. LiPo, LiPo, is RC batteries.
Jim's explaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I misunderstood you there.
That's okay. And that's why I'm saying it, because they're different batteries. They're not the same thing. LiFePOs are generally fairly safe, and they don't have the issues that LiPo has.
Yeah,
LiPo batteries, you have to store at a certain... If you put them away for long-term use, you have to store them at a certain amount. They're very sensitive about the cells being balanced during the charge. Very sensitive. And they will reach out and they will smite you if you don't treat them like a high-maintenance girlfriend. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they actually recommend put them in. They've got little bags to put those in when you charge them. So if they do blow up, they don't go everywhere.
No, the fire, yeah, because they will make fire. Fire.
That was the Samsung batteries there for a while. Were doing that in their phones.
So we're getting a lot of talk in the chat. It looks like everybody is having problems with every kind of battery. Cape Cod's got a lead acid battery that exploded. Garth's got a neighbor that had a house fire due to the LiPo batteries.
LiPos, evil.
A lot of people
be safe
use
around
those.
your
I'm going to
batteries is what we're
reconnect
talking
real quick
about.
because my internet.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
I'm going
freezing.
to reconnect real quick.
We'll carry on.
I think it's
Jim,
time to
will
play
you
a
cover the
spot while we're
bio
waiting
and
for
stuff?
that.
Yeah.
Oh, you can play the video, whatever.
Well, it's, yeah. So we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
Ape was talking about bioenno batteries. And, your mileage may vary with any of these. For me personally, I am not endorsing one battery over another. I have a bioenno. I have other brands. They all work fine. They all do the battery thing sufficiently. But bioenno is the big name in the ham space, like he was saying. And then they have, obviously, a bunch of different sizes. And these batteries are generally rated with 2 or 3 specs that you're looking at. One is the output voltage, 12 volt, 24, 36, whatever. For ham applications, we're generally looking at 12 volts. I'm not going to talk about solar panels because I've never really messed with it. I actually have one, but I've never played with it because it requires me to be outside in the sunlight, and I try to avoid that.
And vampires can't go out in the sun, so.
I hate garlic, man, and I ain't been to church. So when you're looking at these batteries, and I just grabbed this one, these things are rated by basically 2 numbers: the voltage, the nominal voltage, and then the amp hour capacity. And so what 3 amp hours is you can draw 3 amps of current from this battery for an hour, or some smaller amount of 3 amps for longer than an hour. So simple example is if you're pulling 3 amps, this battery is going to last around an hour and give you 3 amps. If you're pulling 1 amp of current, this battery could last you 3 hours. So your mileage will vary because it just depends on what you're doing. If you're powering a Raspberry Pi with this, Jesus, this will probably run 3 or 4 or 5, 10 days. I don't know.
That particular battery I use I've used it a lot with my KX3 or KX2 because
Yeah.
what I usually do is just leave the battery that's in the KX2. I save it as my backup, and this one I've never run it dead on. I mean, I've even done a couple, like 2 activations on the same.
But
battery before.
you're also doing QRP, right?
It's QRP, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so it's a great battery.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is they rated it at 12 volt, which almost all lithiums, especially like the ones that for RVs, they do nominal as 12.8. Because this battery's the same. It'll be 13.1 for a long time.
Well, like
you charge them to like 14.1, right? And then the
he's
second
back.
you take them off the charger, they drop to around 13.8. And then when you put a load on them, they go down to around 12.8, right?
yeah,
Mine will hold on 13.1 for quite a while. Most of my lithiums.
and
He's not going to talk about 12 volts.
just call it 12 volts, and
Well, I just
the
wondered why
reason
they
is
do
that
that.
the individual cells are. I don't remember, what are they? A 3.7.
Yeah, like
4.3?
3.6. I think it's 3.6 for
3.6.
yeah.
So you add enough of those together to get a pack, and these are multiple batteries. So
There's 3 or 4
like
in that one.
My in my car. So when I turn my car on, I'm running off of alternator. It's still considered a 12 volt system, but my alternator is generating 14.1. Is what's going on there. So like when you look at your radios that you're going to do an installation with, they'll say that you need a 12 volt power supply, and then if you look at the specs, they'll typically say the ideal operating voltage is like 3.8 plus or minus a certain percentage. So it's always a good idea to take a look at that. And Chuck was talking about his KX2. They have a very low idle time. So like when you're on a receive only, the amount of current, and on standby current, I think is what they call that, it's very low. And something like a 705 has a higher standby current, especially if you're using things like GPS and Wi-Fi or Bluetooth on that, plus the bigger screen on it.
I use it for that one too, though. It works pretty good for that radio too.
Yeah, I've got the 4 amp version of this battery that I use with that. But my favorite, best one that I've got is this 12 amp hour.
The 12 is a nice shape.
Yeah.
For packing away and stuff.
And you
But
know,
that-
one thing that's really nice about BioNOs, which you can see in these pictures, this little rascal comes with all the charging accessories already rigged up and no open terminals. So that's cool.
Yeah, and you can charge that while you're using it.
Yep.
And if you're going to use something like this battery and you want to charge it while you're using it, you need some sort of charge controller for it. And so what I don't know where it is. Maybe I could look around. But I typically use the Buddy Mini, I think is what it's by Buddy Stick. And that can plug, it's like a solar
Power
panel
pole.
or something in. Now this is a
Yeah.
12 amp hour battery, and I believe I paid around $50 for this. For the 12 amp hour BioNO, I paid $125. And
Yeah.
they're similar in size. There isn't a whole mess of difference. But I really like these little Ampere Time batteries. And what I actually did is I bought 2 of these, and then I can wire them up in parallel. And when I wire them up in parallel, I still have a 12 volt system, but now all of a sudden I've got 24 amps of power.
Yeah, I did
And
that
then we
with
lost
my.
Steve.
I got the 36 amp hours from
Everybody's
my
frozen
Miatis,
right now.
Miatis, and those run my fridge, my little electric fridge, for a long time, like 4 or 5 days one time. Chargers.
Don has a great
Chargers.
question.
One charger can do it all if you buy a sufficient charger. And so I've got 2 Nico power chargers. One charges at 2 amps, one charges at 10 amps. Now I'm not going to put the 10 amp charger on a 12 amp hour battery. So it's really about the amount of current that goes out. The other one is that you want some protection in your charger. And so they'll have cutoffs depending upon the chemistry of the battery. So a good charger, you can say, hey, I'm charging a lead acid battery today. Tomorrow I'll set it to charge a lithium battery.
Right.
So
A lot of the biggest.
we lost James.
The biggest difference, I think, is like lithium's more like 14.4 or somewhere in that area. Okay, at least that's what my 300 amp hour said. But like you said, you don't want to throw
and so like if
20
you're going
amps
to buy
into a
those
little
chargers,
small battery. Are you froze? Everybody's freezing.
yeah, if you're going to buy those chargers, like a Bioenno battery, you could, for $12 or something like that, you can get a charger specifically for that battery, and that's typically what I do. And I've got the one, I think it charges at 2 amps, and I use it for multiple Bioenno batteries. But like for my Redodo battery, for example, or Redodio battery, I can charge that thing, I think, at like 40 amps. So I would use something different just so I could charge it quicker.
I
James, you
charged
got
my
something
batteries
there.
off of my ham radio workbench power supply, and unfortunately, it doesn't put out the amperage. It doesn't force the amperage into the battery. It just kind of sits there and coasts at like 0.5 or 0.05, and it's like,
well,
it's just
Steve,
it's not the tool.
Steve's making a good
maybe
point here.
cut out. I wasn't saying the 20 amp hours $12. I was saying like my 1.5 to 2 amp was like $12.
So these chargers, the one that came with my, and I think it comes with it. I might have.
No,
Because this is the Bioenno I have, but I bought one, or it came with my battery in some fashion. And this charges at 2 amp hours.
2 amps.
So 2 amps per hour. Now I have a 100 amp hour battery, so
It says 30 actually.
50 hours.
doing my math, 50 hours to charge that thing to full.
Yep.
And you're going from AC to DC, so there's a lot of energy lost in heat, so you're paying extra for the electrics that you're bleeding off into the environment and causing entropy to speed up, and we're all going to die. So now I don't know whether the math works out better, but it makes my life better. And this is the one I have, and I won't say this is the most fabulous thing in the world, but it actually works quite well. I bought this off of Amazon, and I can dig up the link while we're talking. This charges, I believe, at it says here on the front, 12 volts, 6 amps, 24 volts, 3 amps. So, and this was like 20 or 25 bucks.
Yeah.
So this charges 3 times faster than the one from Bioenno. And that's fine. The Bioenno one's fine. If you got time to stick a battery on it and leave it and go do other things overnight, then fine. I actually thought this charged faster than that, but I've used this. And the other thing about this kind of deal is you can select the chemistry of the battery on this. So this will charge other than just LiFePOs. I don't know if it charges the devil's battery or not. Oh yeah, it says lithium. So this will do lead acid, lithium, and LiFePO batteries. It also has a test function, a desulfate function. That's for lead acid batteries. And a load test function, like that greasy guy named Jack at the gas station that does the thing with the thing on the car. So this is right. So this is actually a pretty useful gadget if you have any LiFePO batteries or any batteries that you're fooling with over any time. This thing is something like this is great to have, and I'm sure there are better ones, but I'm essentially a cheap bastard about a lot of stuff. So
I don't have problems.
Like Uber
Geek's
Geek's saying, okay, so Uber Geek's saying that some of those chargers like that do generate noise, and that's absolutely true.
Oh yeah.
And I don't understand exactly what Don's saying here. He says I should be able to get a 30 amp charger and charge a 3 amp hour battery. Yes, if you could control that it's not dumping 30 amps into your 3 amp hour battery.
yeah, and that's the BMS will cover
A
that.
6 amp hour charger will not even start to charge this 30 amp hour battery. You should be able to do that just fine. Like I've used a 2 amp hour charger to charge a 100 amp hour battery. You should be able to do that, no problem.
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting that it's not the battery that pulls current from the power supply. It's the power supply that forces current into the battery.
it's the battery because your
So then how
BMS
come
is
my
your
how come my
BMS
30
is
amp
limiting
hour-
that.
How come my 30 amp power supply on my workbench won't push 30 amps into the battery, but my 2 amp will push 2 amps into the battery?
It's a combination of both those things. The BMS on the battery will only allow so much current to recharge. There's a limit on what you can push into it, and then there's a limit on what you can get out of your charger. So the rate is going to be a function of both of those limits.
Right.
Yeah,
but
different
so
chargers are different
my-
things.
My workbench power supply at 30 amps capable output power should be able to push up to the limit of the BMS. It doesn't push anything.
At 12 volts? At 12
it pushes like
14, I mean at
0.
14.1 volts?
It pushes 0.05 amp
Well,
hours in
batteries
amps
will
into the
take
battery.
more when a battery's really dead. It'll take more amperage, and as it charges, it drops that off. So it depends on when you check it. So it may even the one that Jim just showed, it might do the same thing. But there's how you going to check it? You have to throw a.
I mean, a lot of that is the function of the BMS. That's what the BMS does. Right. And then your bench power supply, while it may be 30 amps, it may not be 30 amps at 12 volts. So, I mean, that's like almost 700 watts. I don't know. I'd have to put a meter on it.
It's a 30 volt power supply. Is that what you said?
30 amp. It's a 12. It's a ham radio workbench supply. It's a 30 amp power supply, and it delivers 13.8 volts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's not a charger, right? That is a power.
It's
supply.
Not a charger, right? That's the distinction I'm making there.
Yeah,
I wonder if that 30 amps
I do the same thing. I do the same thing when I charge with my UPS. Is like I adjust the voltage on there. So if I plug in a dead battery, it's going to start dumping more amps into my battery that I want. So I turn the voltage down and it lowers it. And then as my battery charges, I adjust my voltage up to continue with the same rate.
So I bought one of these. I'm a real fan of Victron stuff.
Those are nice, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those are kind of high-endy, right, Charles?
I can't tell which way it is, but yeah, it's not a cheap one. If you want a cheap one, but when I did my 300 amp hour test, I ran it till the battery management system just on a lithium they'll shut off, right? And usually you have to jump it with another battery to get it to start back up, and then you can charge it. This one actually goes
so jacked right now.
This one went through a test set. It tested the battery, and then all of a sudden, boom! It turned it on, just like you would by touching another battery to it. So it's called a smart. There's a lot of them called smart chargers, but this one does everything. All the different types of batteries, and it's 3 amps or 10 amps, I think is what it is. And if you have the time to charge your battery, charge it with less amps. That's always a better thing. Because you don't want to throw, if you don't have to, you don't want to throw a bunch of amperage into your battery. A slow charge is usually better.
And we lost the primate.
Nebraska's.
He was going to talk about Todd's
siege.
comment. Charge at 1C, meaning a 5 amp hour battery at 5 amps and a 10 amp hour battery at 10 amps.
Right. That's kind of what I was saying. You don't want to overcharge.
Right.
You know,
and then
you don't
doesn't
pump too much into it.
But isn't that's also a spec on these batteries too? Let me see if I can find where it says that on a given LifePo battery.
Yeah, you have
because I
do
think
it
it'll
on their
tell
site.
you what the. Sir, what?
I said you got to do it on their site because you can't read the battery.
Man, so you were saying, Chuck,
windows.
when I dropped because my internet was acting goofy, when you use a slower charge, it increases the longevity of your battery.
Right.
One thing Todd was saying here is a safe criterion is to charge at 1C, meaning a 5 amp hour battery at 5 amps. When I charge a battery, I typically do it at 0.2C, which would be 20% of capacity. So if I have a 10 amp hour battery, I would charge it at 2 amps. If I had a 5 amp hour battery, I would charge it at 1 amp. Now, I have seen batteries that say they can charge at 1C, but that's going to generate heat, which is the enemy of a battery because it builds resistance in your battery. And the more resistance over time that you have inside a battery, the less discharge current you're going to get out of that.
Yeah, I was looking for on this Bioenno page where it said what the maximum charge current was.
I don't think they tell you.
I don't see it.
I looked for it the other day too, and they don't really say. But they offer. I was going to say also on Bioennos, if you're going to buy a Bioenno battery and there happens to be any kind of a Hamfest, buy it at the Hamfest because then the charger usually does come free.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll have like surplus batteries or a special because maybe when they put this on, it's got a split or something like that in there. So like a lot of times Bioenno, they do a fantastic job of selling at a discount at Hamfest.
Weren't they selling like refurbished batteries or something once? Also?
They were, and people were praised for them.
So on the Bioenno, and this is in the user manual, which I could share, but it'll be tiny and you won't be able to see it.
We're talking about the manual, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, for this particular, I thought I said manual.
The oversharing light is on.
Yes.
Yeah. The charging current should be between. So on this one, only use a 14.6 volt LifePo compatible charger. The charging current should
6.
be between 2 to 3 amps. So,
Yeah.
And which battery is that?
Bioenno.
No,
that's for this. What is this? A 3 amp hour? 3
Yeah.
amp hour.
I think it goes all the way up into the 12s. They only say 2 amp.
Well, I'm gonna look because now I'm curious about that exact thing, Chuck.
Because usually they recommend which charger that you buy with your battery.
Let's see. So let's go. Well, that goes along with what Todd said, though. That's 1C, right? On a 3 amp hour battery, 1C would be 3 amps of current.
It would.
Yeah. You can't blast.
Well, I think you'd be hard pressed to find, like, with you're talking like a 100 amp hour battery. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a charger that does 100 amps. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying you ain't picking one up at the gas station. So I want to talk a little bit about voltage because we were just talking about this. When people talk about batteries, voltage is typically the most common rating that you're going to see. And it can get a little confusing when you talk about batteries because sometimes batteries are referred to by size. Like people will say, oh, that's a AA or a AAA battery. Mm-hmm. But the square ones, the 9 volts, they refer to them as a 9 volt.
TO started early.
He needs some milk.
Thank you, TC.
What you got,
Thank you, TC
boys?
Fitz.
Thank you, TC.
Appreciate it. And then the other thing I have down here, some batteries, and I said, well, like a 12 volt battery is typically 13.8. Sometimes I'll call them a car battery. We wanted to talk a little bit about capacity because sometimes that's a confusing topic, and people refer to it as the total energy in a battery versus the total energy you can get out of the battery. And that's rated in milliamps for small batteries or amp hours for larger ones. You'll see batteries that say, hey, this battery does 1,280 watts, or it does 1.8 or 1.28 watt hours. Is something that you'll see there. And people will argue back and forth, what's the best way to measure capacity? Like, should you be measuring it in watt hours or should you be measuring it in amp hours? And I think there was a comment earlier where somebody was saying they were shocked at how much energy their coffee maker takes in order to run.
It was Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, man, I get surprised by that as well. Because if you have a coffee maker that you have to feed into an inverter and it uses 1,000 amps or 1,000 watts to power that.
Damn.
So if you take 1,000 watts and you divide it by 120 volts, what do you get there? Let me pull up my calculator. 1,000.
85.
So you're getting
8.5.
8. You're using 8.5 amps, but that's over AC current, and so that's going to be 85 amps when you're looking at it out of a DC battery.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like a 10 to 1. It's like a 10 to 1 ratio.
Yeah. Well, watts is volts times amps, and if you're talking AC, 120.
Right.
And batteries are 12. So yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So like, if you want to run a coffee maker, you ain't doing that with your 12 amp hour Bioenno. You're gonna need a 100 amp hour battery. And that's
Kevin's got quite the system in his trailer, and he was using. He actually does make his coffee with the electric pop. I think he said it had a bun or something. He does that. Personally, myself, I save my battery and I just start my generator for a coffee, but because that is a really big draw on your batteries.
Yeah, any kind of heater is gonna be a thing.
Well, yeah,
resistive. It's resistive.
Yeah. So when I would take my camper winter camping and I knew I was going to be running the heater all night, so mine is an electric heater that uses a lot of wattage in order to run, but it's powered off. The heat source is actually propane, so it burns propane but uses a blower.
But those fans draw a lot.
And I would typically go to a place that I could just plug into, right? So I was on shore power or the grid,
Hey, Thump.
or something like that.
Thump. I haven't seen Thump in a while.
Hey, Thump.
Well, yeah, we know. It was just
Yeah, I was just for instance.
not touching. Not touching.
I was just for instance in there, and I don't know. I bet you
Right.
my crew rig upstairs. I bet you that's using 1,000 watts.
And it's screwing up the environment and causing the carbon to bloom
Yeah.
on your gas stove.
I think this kind of covers it. I was talking a little bit about the conversions. that you would use. So like sometimes you'll go to buy a battery and somebody will say to you, you know, it's a 1,280 watt hour battery and a watt battery. And it's really 100 amp hours. And sometimes you need to be able to do that math in order to understand what you're looking at or what you're, maybe pricing out or contemplating buying. And one of the things that throws a little bit of a wrinkle in this is a lot of folks will use 24 volt batteries or even 48 volt, like solar charging systems to go into inverters that are 48 volt inverters. And then that gets you greater efficiency. So one of the things is when you're pushing a lot of amperage from your battery into whatever it is you're powering off of that, whether it's your ham shack or your inverter or whatever, higher amperage requires heavier cabling, and that cabling gets very expensive very fast. If you're using undersized cabling, you start to run into heat problems where you're losing energy, and then you could even start a fire doing some of that. So a lot of folks, when they start talking about lots of energy, lots of power, will start stepping up in terms of the voltage of their overall system.
See you, Don.
I just checked a Mr. Coffee drip, and it's 975 watts. Yes.
There you go. We talked
Janice
a little
has
bit.
not got a bad idea, and it involves fire, so I'm good with that.
We talked a little bit about series and parallel, and I know Tio's been working feverishly over there. You ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll. You be the guide. You be the muse. I'll be the artist.
Oh Lord!
There we go. Look at that. We got a battery.
Look at that. It's a battery.
I got some hookup wire too.
That's precious.
Oh, yes.
So
It's a
when we
12
talk
gauge.
about connecting batteries in parallel, that gives you double the amperage but maintains your voltage. So a lot of times you'll see people use two batteries and or more. But you always should check the instruction manual for your batteries because some of them have higher numbers of things that you can hook in series and parallel, and some say don't do it at all. So like I think the official stance on the Bioenno is not to do that, but I think you can, but I'm not going to tell you to do that. So yeah, one of the ways that the way that you connect batteries in parallel is what Tio's doing there is you can connect two batteries, negative to negative, positive to positive. And then you would connect a wire from the positive to the positive of your load and the negative to the negative of your load.
Take your time.
This is like art.
I'm drawing,
Good.
man. You can't rush art.
If I saw Art, I'd let him know.
Don't rush yourself, Art.
Don't rush.
So that
there
would
you
be
go, and then you hook your.
yeah.
That's beautiful, man.
It is. And then the other thing that you can do is you can increase your voltage and keep your amps the same. So remember we going over the formula earlier. So one of the things that you'll see folks do is take maybe two 12 amp hour batteries, connect them in series, and now they have two 12 volt batteries. Connect them in series, and then you end up with a 24 volt system. Or like in the case of like the golf carts, they use a bunch of 6 volt batteries. Now somebody's going to come in here and be like, my golf cart takes a 12 volt. But what you would do is that by hooking them in the series configuration, you double your voltage, but your overall amperage stays the same.
So help me up with the wiring here. Positive to negative, and then where do we go from there?
Then your negative for the circuit is the negative on your lead battery, and the positive for the circuit.
No,
son.
The other way.
Yeah.
Go to the negative.
That's
there.
that's your negative side of your circuit. So draw him all the way out to our load. Yeah, he goes to the load, and then the positive on the right battery is the positive for the load, and that's
So just like that.
Yep, just like that.
So you
And that's
basically made
series.
one battery.
Yep, that's series.
And so this will
Now-
double your voltage.
We'll
It'll
double your
double your
voltage and keep your amperage,
It'll still
your
be
total
12
current
amp hour.
available the same.
So like a battery like this, sometimes it'll be multiple. So what people will do is they'll take 3.6, like you can take 3.6 volt batteries and put the 2 of them in series or 4 of them in series, and then take the 4 that are in series, take another bank of 4 in parallel and hook them together, and that way you can continue to up your batteries. So like a lot of people are getting excited about these mini batteries that are coming out. They're 100 amp hour batteries that are smaller than the typical size. And
So
they
it's
have a
gonna be like
series of pouches. Yeah, that would be 3. They have a series of pouches in them where the battery is I think it was 12 bank or 4 banks of 12 would be 48 individual batteries wired in series and parallel in them. So, yeah, Paul, that's what we were saying at the beginning of the show. Any battery can catch fire if you don't know what you're doing. And even if you do know what you're doing, you could still have an accident. Right? That's why they're called accidents.
And this is what they would call 3S 1P.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 3 serial, 1 parallel.
Yes. Yes.
So like this little battery is, I guess, a 4. This has 4 batteries in it.
Yes, that's 4S1P.
So 4S1P.
Right, and then like a bigger battery might be that 2 of those 4S1Ps together, which would become 4S2P, which would mean 4 series, 2 of them in parallel.
Yeah, it's pretty easy once you kind of think about it a little bit. But
I always wondered why they didn't call it 4C2P, and I guess they got confused. They think you're, I don't know.
4 cells versus 4 series, because you're wiring it in series.
I guess.
I don't know.
That was a little Star Trek thing. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's.
Not
I also
Trek,
thought about: are we confused that our batteries will go faster than light if we call it C?
Maybe.
And we got a jokester in there. That is funny, Mike. He's saying a series on this topic would have potential.
Listen, we think we have a well-grounded show already, and I'm just saying. So Dean had a question, and there's several circuit simulators out there, but there's all sorts of examples.
Well, I don't know if there's something that you can say, hey, if you hook these power sources together, this is what your expected output would be. I think that's what he's looking for.
Sometimes the battery manufacturer has it, especially on these lithiums. If you go into their actual site, sometimes they'll recommend it and they'll tell you quite a bit of info.
Yeah. I mean, this
It's like
honestly,
a classroom.
Draw it out on paper. If you're doing a series circuit like this, then it's going to be positive, negative, and you're going to use the only open positive and the only open negative is your load. And if you're doing parallel, like Steve had drawn, just draw it out. It makes sense to me drawing it out because that way you can keep up with where your wires are supposed to go.
Yeah, and so everybody knows I'm a book nerd. I'd suggest picking this DIY for lithium batteries up.
Oh.
Now, this is a book about how to build your own battery packs, but a lot of the information in here, and it's not overly technical. A lot of the information in there would get you the battery terminology and theory that you would need to know when choosing a battery. I think that book's pretty cheap. I think it was like $15 or something like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's a nice little piece of reference material to go on your ham shack shelf, right? So the thing is that if you do have a power outage, maybe an extended power outage, and you want to do some setups, you got to put something together, it's always a good idea to have paper copies of knowledge that you could refer to, just double check what you're thinking.
I'm kind of like Jim. I like the having the digital thing so I can print out a page and not ruin my book.
Right.
Yeah,
I just hate books.
I
They
used to
take
work
up too
on-
much dang space.
I've worked on
Ape
stuff
is
like
Ape is a
Forerunners and
throwback.
stuff.
I mean, in the flat world, they don't have Kindles
Yeah,
or iPads,
With all this power we're generating, we can run our laptops and our Kindles.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just like to have the paper, and then like I sometimes will write notes and stuff like that down in there, and I just.
Okay, so now I never wrote no notes in no book ever in my life. That's weird.
You can tell. You can tell.
Whatever. You were probably that kid's mom. Your mom
Still
probably had to
honest.
pay the security deposit for all your books when she took them back to school at the end of the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Damn,
Well,
little
I
Ape
didn't
keeps
do
writing in
much
his books, Mrs. Mama Ape.
Like,
He used to take them down and photocopy them, but then he found out it cost more to do that than just buy the book.
Right.
I remember when photocopies were free. Now they're like 25 cents a page. It's ridiculous.
Inflation, man.
I remember when I cared about photocopies mostly. I mean,
I just photocopied a bunch of stuff the other day.
What else you got on that list there?
yeah, let's see the rest of them slides, son. You put some work into that.
So we were talking a little bit about how much battery do you need, and this is really more on the ham operating POTA side, SOTA side. So what you need to really figure out is how long you're going to be operating. Again, like when you see somebody say, "Well, that battery lasts me 6 hours. It's a good battery," that doesn't mean anything. So you guys figure out how long you're going to be operating, and then you need to figure out how much time you're going to be doing listening versus transmitting, right? See, Janice is a very smart person there. And so what you want to do is you figure out what percentage of an hour you're going to be doing each one of these. And you're going to ballpark it because it's never going to be exact. And you plan one thing and something else happens. So this is more of a rule of thumb or a guideline, not a hard, fast rule. Now, this looks intimidating, but it's really not. So when you talk about math, and I know everybody's like, oh, my God. But there's a couple things you need to know, and that would be your variables, the percentage of time you're going to be receiving. So let's just say that you're going to be receiving 80% of the time, and then what percentage of the time you're going to be transmitting. Well, if you're listening to 80, then that means you're transmitting 20. And then it says, well, how many hours of operation? So let's just say we're going to go out for a 4-hour activation, right? So of that 4 hours, 80% of the time I'm going to be receiving, 20% of the time I'm going to be transmitting. And then you need to know what your load is going to be at standby when you're receiving and what your load is on transmitting. And you can use those little meters to measure that. And I've got one, and I don't have it here. But
the no-name meter that everybody has?
No, mine's the PowerWorks. But in
Mine's the PowerWorks. I'm fancy.
Yeah.
Special.
Ooh.
So
Can't buy that either. So he's got
the way that you look at it is really it's your standby or receiving load plus your transmitting load times the number of hours gives you your total power required. And so here's the actual formula, and it looks like a spelling test more than a math test. But when you plug in the numbers, so you have 80% of the time times 2 amps plus 20% of the time times 10 amps times 4 hours. So it's 80% at 2 amps is 1.6. And then 20% of 10 is 2 amps times 4. So you're going to really be burning 3.6 amps an hour times 4 hours, 14.4 amp hours. Now, I'd pad that a little bit. If this was my plan, I wouldn't buy a 14 amp hour battery. I'd probably buy a 20 because I don't think you can get an 18. And that's what I'd be looking at. Now, some people come in here and be like, well, I took my 12 amp hour battery out and it lasted me more than 4 hours, so APE is wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But what I would suggest
could be wrong.
What I would suggest is you're doing different percentages of listening versus transmitting, and your load is a little bit different than this as well.
Well, like FT8 would take more too, right? If you're doing a lot of FT8.
Well, the thing is that gets into a little bit more.
Out?
Yeah, well, that gets into a little bit more complexity. Is that if you're going to be looking at what's called duty factor, and that is like when you talk into your radio at single sideband, it uses about 85% of your available power. If you do FT8, it's using 100% because it's full duty cycle of your available power. But if you measure that before you go out, you can estimate what your load is on transmit, right? And then that way you can just factor that into this formula. Like I said, this is more of a guideline than an actual precise how much you're going to use. And then what I have in here is that you need to take in some considerations when you do this, like your type of battery versus your SLA or a lithium. So if you need 10 amps, you're going to have to buy a 20 amp hour SLA because you only drain them to 50% of capacity. You could still buy the 10 amp hour lithium and be fine. And then a lot of times people run like if you're doing FT8, you got to consider the power of your laptop. So if you're going to power your laptop off of your battery, you need to figure out what your laptop power requirements are at standby and transmission and figure that in there too. And that's the same as you're charging your tablet or your Raspberry Pi. And one of the things that people get around this limitation is that they'll take a little charge controller and a solar panel and plug that in. And so maybe you're burning 10 watts an hour or 10 amps an hour, but you're putting back into your system 5 amps an hour from your solar panel. That's going to extend your time by 50% as long as you're charging with the solar panel.
And Janice had a great point here. If you're doing CW, number one, you're kind of a badass. Right. And number two, that's going to suck a whole lot less power.
They also this with CW though, you don't have to have the same power output on your radio, right?
Right.
Like you can CW carries a lot further. CW is a much more narrow bandwidth of a signal, and as a result, it takes less energy to kick it down the road.
I like that. Kick it down the road. That's good.
So you got a slide over here. What are you sharing?
Me? That's just the BioEnno site that I've been sharing.
I got you.
That was, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to look at on it. We were looking at batteries, and I mentioned this in the chat on this particular battery. So the maximum charge thing on that 3 amp hour was 3 amps. On this 30 amp hour, the manual, which is not on the webpage, you got to download a PDF, but the manual on this says 6 amp hour charge rate on this guy.
Yeah, because 2 amp hours takes a long time.
Right. And Steve, this may be the answer to part of your question too, is, and I'm surprised that I didn't realize that would be that low at 6 amp hours for charge. So the BMS is probably throttling the crap out of that.
I love Bioenno batteries, and people are going to be like, Ape is a heretic. At $300, I'm going to buy the 100 amp hour Red Odeo.
Yes, I am. I'm going to buy 2 of them and move on with my life.
You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I don't like I have 3 Bioenno batteries, and I love them, and they are fantastic. But if I'm starting to look at higher capacity systems, I'm probably not going to go with Bioenno.
Well, I mean, there's a 50 amp hour for $500.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think these are fantastic. I have zero problem with them. I think everybody should have them, but I'm just not dropping that kind of cash on it.
Yeah, that's a pricey
Yeah,
battery.
man,
Oh, finally the battery
man.
guy shows up. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
He should
it's early
actually
for
be
him.
here.
It's early. It's only 8 o'clock out there, right?
He's talking about his
Yes,
Denko batteries,
exactly.
the ones that you can't buy.
Yeah, the awesome Denko batteries that are only to the secret cabal of Denko customers.
So I think that runs through the topics that I was going to cover today. We're
Are
probably
we doing a second version?
We're probably going to need a separate conversation on charge controllers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll probably need another conversation on solar. We did a video on solar about a year ago with Kevin, though, didn't we?
Yeah, but
Thought we did a video on solar.
the reason
less time than that.
Chuck, I'm going to
reason
put you
I
on full
designed
screen.
this-
Why don't you talk
So-
about your project over there?
so at the yurt we're doing
That looks good
solar,
right there.
and I built a little box while we were there the other day. This is solar for an outside kitchen at the yurt. So, and the ladies go, well, the rain's coming in from when we put this little lean-to roof on. We just hadn't flashed it yet. But I told my buddy, I'm like, everything's going to get wet because it's an outside kitchen and it's really windy where the yurt is. So we picked up a little, like a Tupperware thing that was sealed.
Oh, boy.
And yeah, Thump, I know, man. When I
can't
run my
get good
corners,
help, Thump.
it doesn't. I need to learn the one that he uses, because when I round mine, it rounds it in every direction. I don't like that. But so I got a little Tupperware thing. We're looking for some kind of a box to put in so it wouldn't get wet, right? So I get that, and we get a lid off another box, or the bottom of another box, and I cut it out, and I make my little thing. But I didn't have the tools to really make it right. So this is for a shunt, the hole up here. And because the shunt's supposed to it's made to fit into something, and that's how you mount it.
You want to
So I
talk a
just
little
drew
bit
this
about
up.
what a shunt is and what it does?
Well, I didn't know if you want to bring a shunt up, because that might
we-
be the next discussion, but
we got
could
15
bring it
minutes.
both times.
You got one? Give me somewhere to go, Charles.
So
Tell me where to
really
go.
The only real way you can see where your battery is at, voltage is an indication, but it's not a very good indication. If you watched any of our, especially Ape had the one where it showed the graph where his lithium went like this, and then all of a sudden it went like that. All of a sudden it's dead. So you might think at 13.1 volts the thing is still it's still full charge, but a shunt is the only way it measures what you've used out of it. And basically what happens on a shunt is you have what they call a B minus and a P minus, or a P minus. The B minus goes to the battery, and it might be different for different brands. But everything else that draws from the battery has to go to the, let's see. Yeah, see that it goes to the battery on the left side, I think is how this one works.
And it's
And
just
on
the
the-
negative on the right.
So it's the negative of the battery. And then usually there's a positive one, and that gets the power to the shunt, so it can give you info, because usually it has some kind of monitor. The one I have has a monitor. This one here, it actually goes to your phone or has a monitor. So all your draws go on the P side, that was for a certain brand that I had, so that everything that goes through that battery goes through that shunt, and it tells you how much of you have to like totally charge your battery up till it's full charged and set it at 100% for how many amp hours your battery is. And then it'll
Baseline, yeah.
you get your baseline, and then it'll tell you, and we did this you can kind of do it with the solar controllers. It's not as, I don't think it's quite as accurate, but it does show you if the battery's taking charge. But it doesn't give you a percentage. But the ladies up there, we wanted to make sure that they could, hey, our solar, it's been raining for the last 10 days, which it has been, and our solar's not keeping up with our usage, so they could take the battery home and charge it, right? So that way they can, there's the part that goes with it there.
This guy,
Victron
has a lot of different stuff, and some of the stuff is like stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff. To really
and their equipment just looks fantastic, and it's well built.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
the only
that
thing
means
I've ever
business.
seen. The only thing I've seen Will talk about, Will Pross, is the connections for their solar they're not real big,
yeah.
but they work.
Yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 different solar controllers, so maybe we'll do a show and tell video on those.
Yeah, I really like their stuff. So that shunt is really the only way you're going to tell where your battery. It'll give you a percentage, like that one says 90s. Does that say 96.3%?
yeah.
So I mean and I'm just finding it because I always look at voltage on my motorhomes and some of my trailers and campers and all that stuff. But all of a sudden it'll be dead, and it won't pull what you need to pull.
Well, back in the day, that was the way to do it. Right? With the sealed lead acid batteries, you would look at
really.
voltage. There was a direct correlation between voltage and capacity. It's not the case with the lithium batteries. We got
So TO's going to find all this stuff out pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Living off grid.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get the GoFundMe for Scott posted up.
And I'll bring you all along for the journey.
Give me 1 second, guys.
So we can go more into it, and we did a whole thing up there. We did a solar kit. I tell you the truth, I was really impressed with the solar panel. It's eco-worthy, and it was like totally overcast, cloud coverage, and we were still drawing 2 amps out of the thing. I think it was 2 amps.
You can get sunburned on a cloudy day.
Oh, I know. But usually it cuts your solar down quite a bit.
Oh, for sure. But panels have been getting better and better. It used to be like if you shattered the glass and just the upper corner of the panel, the whole thing was dead. And
Right.
now that's not the case with some panels.
Right. And they've got, who's that? Bouge RV? Bouge?
Bouge.
They got a new one. How
Bouger.
they call it the SP9 something. It's how it's wired, and it makes they're getting smaller. That's what's nice.
Dennis, it's
100
because you're pale. That's why.
we got Joe Brett in the chat. So we
Jay
had
Bizzle
had a little bit of a long night there last night. Joe Brett staying dry.
I don't think he's worried about staying dry so much as not getting blowed away.
It's like
Yeah, well, I want to know what
he have a
pieces of
basement?
ham
shack
equipment.
roof.
Or
What
shelter.
pieces of ham equipment did he take out of the shack and bring into the rut cellar?
You kids, carry as many of these HTs as you can. Right?
I'm sure
Stick them in
his
your pockets wherever you got it.
3
Make sure
each.
you get all my HTs.
Little Timmy, there ain't enough room for you in the cellar and that amp, so you stay with the amp out here and protect it.
We're hold on to that thing.
Hold onto that rope. Let me tie it to your leg.
I tell you what, man. I don't know if you guys watch Ryan Hall, but
Ryan Hall, y'all.
Man, that guy, he is the best weatherman that I've ever seen. And whenever there's any inclement weather, he'll go live streaming if it's going to be dangerous. And I was watching him a little bit last night, and within like 3 minutes, they had like 3 tornado reportings up in northern Mississippi. I was looking for Tupelo. I'm not exactly sure where Brojet is, but I didn't see Tupelo on there.
Oh, he was carrying the HTs, it looks like.
He's a
says he was
professional
soaking wet.
amateur radio operator
That's right.
and a law enforcement officer, so he was probably doing double duty. One of them HTs was probably for 5-0 and the fire department.
He's also a drone operator. Let's not forget, he has a long list of accreditation.
I'm pretty sure he wasn't flying last night. Last night was probably a no-go
Probably
for the
not.
drone.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, did we have other battery stuff that we wanted to do here? Or?
That was your show, man.
Well, I told you, I finished my.
I mean, I
Defer
think
to your greatness.
I think you covered everything that was worth even talking about. And if you didn't say it, then who are we? Yeah, I mean, my video. I talked to Ape before the stream when I realized we were doing a battery video today, but my video is gonna work in with all of this and what Steve had done last week. So I think it's all good
Do some of
information.
that Steve stuff for my yurt video. You have to school me on that.
You know me, it's all about measuring and
We'll
testing.
We'll do it.
So Adam's asking the best Group 24 battery for the West Mountain battery box.
Have backs, no battery. Bro.
Yeah, West Mountain does have some pretty slick battery boxes that you can get and put in there.
Is he talking lead acid, I guess, then?
Well, I
They're
think
in
you can,
groups.
What's Group 24?
I think
It's the size and shape and where the
It's the
posts
size.
are on the battery.
It's a smaller
Configuration.
RV style battery usually is.
Okay.
Like RVs are like Group 24, Group 27, Group 29, Group 31.
Well, let's Google it.
Progressively
Let's
get bigger.
Google
I'm on
Group
it.
20
I'm on it.
Group 24.
Chuck, what did we have in the fire trucks? What were those things? Those big bastards we had in the
31s.
truck? 31s.
31s.
So are we looking for brand name? Are we looking for size? I
They
mean, my
weighed 8
recommendation
million
on
pounds.
size would be get the biggest one you can afford because you'll never complain about not having enough.
Yeah.
You'll never complain about having too much power, but you'll always complain about not having enough. So
Yeah.
that becomes a budgetary concern. And then from there, you got to work backwards into brand name. So, I mean, you can get a Group 24 that's 100 amp hours. You can get a Group 24 that's 50 amp hours.
The one we got was 80, and that shunt only goes down to 100. So I need to talk to Ape on. It's never going to be, the shunt's not going to be super accurate.
But see, that's a lead battery. I would still get a lithium.
I would get lithium, and honestly, any of the ones that you did, the Redodos, I refuse to put an eye in there.
Probably a 50 amp hour, maybe.
So here's the trick for you, Jim. You don't
Get the size.
say the second word, you spell it. So
I
it's
know.
ODO.
I know.
ODIO.
Grab the size off of that battery.
Some of
Any
the
of those.
batteries that I
Group
like to
24,
batch
dimensions.
Group 24 size wise.
Gotcha.
Dimensions.
are these Power Queens, and I know that that's a goofy ass name, but I
so
really
there it
like my
is.
Power Queen batteries.
11
Right
by
there.
7 by 10.
Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Yep, 11, 7, 10.
So what's a 50 amp hour? Do you still have your
Go
bio
to Power
analog?
Queen. Go to Power Queen.
Go to Power Queen.
Oh, my God. Okay, hold on.
That's what you got too, Chuck. And you get the 300 amp Power
Yeah,
Queen.
that thing's. I'm impressed with it. I mean, it did its 300 plus.
I haven't
least
done
the
a
way I
video
figured
on my
it.
Power Queens because they're 200 amps and they just take for. First off, they're huge, and then they take
Mine's
forever
3,
to.
man.
And also for Adam's question, we're going to assume that he's talking about a ham radio battery, not a car battery or an RV battery
Right.
or a starter battery or a trolling motor.
So am I looking for the 300 here, Chuck? Is that what
Good.
we
Look
want
at
to pull up?
look at a 50.
Yeah, look at
50?
that 50
See
up
what the
there.
size of their 50 is, dimension wise. Now.
Yeah, that's lawnmower size.
I bet you it's bigger than that. It's a.
Seven,
Seven,
po-
six,
7 and
seven.
3/4. Yeah.
It's pretty close, right? It's a little shorter.
The
Look
other
at
one was
the hun-
9,
look at the
11,
100.
something.
9, 11, and 10. So that would probably fit in the box if that's what you're looking for.
I think so. Yeah.
Look at that 100 and see if that would fit in there.
And see at the 100. They are smaller.
And then also now they have those minis. Verdodio's sending me one of those minis to test. But I
By
haven't
your
messed with one
command.
yet.
I'm going to put that in the sound effects. By your command.
By your command.
11 by 8 by 8.
That'll
It's
still fit.
close, huh?
You might be able to ease that one in there. That's,
Now,
Yeah,
you
it
look
depends on your
look at
wiring and any other gadgets that are on that box. I mean, I'm sure that'll fit in the box, but you
If
also
he's
got to leave
putting
room for
other
plugs
things
and
like-
whatnot.
If you're
Yeah.
putting like a solar controller in there, that 50 would probably be good. You look at the price though, and you need to buy 3 of those other batteries to last what this one lasts. Supposedly, I mean, it's kind of a new technology. Actually, that's kind of high for that battery. That's the smart battery.
Yeah, that's a little pricey for
That's the-
Hundo.
well,
Hey,
that's
what's the
that's
Redo-
the-
what's the
that's the upper
Redodo
one.
site? Is it redodo.com?
Red Audio. But see, the thing is, you're looking at that extra $100 on the price of this one because it has the temperature controls on there.
Right. So you can buy a
okay.
cheaper 100 amp hour from them.
And Redodo, I'm not
kinda good to
sponsored
know.
by Redodo. They have a sale going on, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Power Queen just went off, I think, or is going off soon.
Yeah, so if you take a look at
3%.
that, if you
This one?
take a actually the code the Smoke and Ape will get you 4% off on the site.
Oh, big money.
But see, if you take a look at that mini,
Go temporarily offline, will get you 5%.
Where's the mini at?
And I'm shooting for
I don't know.
6.
Will it really?
No. but I had to be better than you anyway.
Oh, it's fire. It's got fire on it.
But this mini, I'm not sure what size it is, but this, instead of using 4 prismatic cells, this is the one I was talking about that uses 4 cells, but each one of those cells is made up of 12. I don't know what they're battery pouches. And so that
10,
one,
5, 8.
yeah, that one probably fit in the.
Oh,
in the
you could
battery
get 2
box
of
too.
those in there. It looks like side by
10,
side.
5, 9.
Here's the thing: somebody was saying that which battery manufacturer makes the best batteries. All of these China brands are coming out with this exact same mini battery. Power Queen has one that's coming out. Ampere Time has one that's coming out. I'm sure Chins will have one that's coming out. So I think all these batteries are made at a large battery manufacturing facility
Tell you
to
the truth,
the individual branding specs, because they're all a little bit different, and they're all going to be they're all made at the same place.
for the most part, all your lead acid batteries are made in the same place too. Same thing.
Right.
So I've heard.
Now, these are only saying, oh, that's a bold statement, 4,000 to 15,000 charge cycles.
Yeah, that seems a little.
Usually
Little
it's
sketchy.
Isn't it
I
usually
think
like
the
8
engineer
to-
was hitting the bong a little hard when he
The
wrote
range
the
is a bit
specs.
broad on that, like
Maybe they
4,000
put an
or
extra-
3 times as much.
Maybe they put a 1 in front of that 5
Plus.
by accident. But what they say is that the 4,000 is rated off of 100% of discharge. If you're only doing
Right.
30 to 40% of discharge, you're going to get significantly more charge cycles out of the battery.
And then when they do hit that charge cycle, they're still 80%, supposedly. Right?
Right.
So you haven't killed it yet.
Gigantic energy.
So do they ever go bad then? I mean, do they just continue to, like, after 4,000 cycles, it goes down to 80. After another 4,000, it goes down to 70. After another 4,000, it goes down to
I'm sure eventually
50.
it's not worth having, but
Yeah, I don't know if the degradation cycle is linear
Is it
or if it's
80?
exponential. But the thing is, it's like I've used smaller lithium batteries until the point where they were completely dead. And when they were completely dead, I could still charge them, but they wouldn't hold the charge.
Right.
So I'm sure that they run out at some point. And Joe Brett, I feel your pain, brother. This is the exact same problem that I've got. He said every time he cleans his shack, he seems to
mine's-
clutter up quicker and worse.
I just quit
Mine's
cleaning my
times a
shack,
week.
Joe. I just quit.
mine's a mess.
So is it
4 times a
80%? Ape,
It's
is
like
it
a diet.
is it 80% and then 80% of that when you hit the new threshold, and then 80% of that?
But see,
So the threshold of 80 becomes the new 100, and you just keep easing down, something like that.
yeah. Well, the thing is that again, that's a guideline. So if you're one of these guys that's pulling full capacity out and shoving full capacity back in, you create more resistance, and it's the R value is how they measure that, the amount of resistance in the battery. Now, some battery manufacturers are, a little greasy. What they'll do is that they'll buy these 80% capacity batteries and then say, "Hey, look, we've got an 80 amp hour battery for you here," but they're selling you used or recycled batteries.
Used 100 amp hours.
Yeah, used 100 amp hour batteries.
Now, I missed this in the chat. Craig said it's going to be SLA for a $150 budget.
He's asking what kind of battery chemistry he should get and what kind of battery type and that kind of thing. And then his
Okay.
budget is 150.
So
mean,
we just bought a Group 24 for the yard up there. My buddy bought it. It was like 125, 130 bucks.
And it was
lead
at-
acid.
Yeah, the Duracell one looked pretty nice that you had up there.
That was what's the green ones? The brand. They've been around.
Oh, Interstate.
Interstate. That was
Interstate, yeah.
But you want to make sure you get a deep cycle
Right.
battery.
Don't want a
crank.
starting battery. Not
Yeah,
cranking
not
ones.
a starting battery. Sometimes they'll call it a deep cycle or a marine battery.
Yeah.
Is what you want to look at.
Yep. What was the size on that? Did you get the mini? It was tiny. Maybe
It was
that's
like
what should go
10
in
and a
there.
half by 5.5 by 6.5, something like that.
It
that's what
almost
she-
looked like you could get 2 of them in there in a
Wow.
Group 24 box.
Because I have 2 Group 24s on my trailer, and I think the Group 24 that we bought for up there was only 80 amp hours. But I mean, for the size, I guess that's not bad.
So one of Original Outlaws asked us when the solar panel show is.
Soon.
I'm going to say maybe a month, because the thing is that it's still got to warm up a little bit so we can all get outside and maybe get some pictures and stuff like that.
Warm,
I
that's
ain't
so
seen the sun
precious.
since I don't know when.
That's precious. Warm up. It's already like 85 or 90 here.
Yeah.
I'm not
we're gonna
lying.
hit
I'm
almost
not.
40
That is not
today.
an exaggeration. It's already in the 80s, well into the 80s here.
I'll have a quick little video on how we did the yurt.
You're so cute.
How we mounted it. It didn't, unfortunately, we got stuff mounted before I actually could get my camera out. One of the guys that works with us, I love working with him because he thinks ahead. I was working with some kids, and I had to every step I had to tell him, hey, well, maybe you guys should, while you're not doing anything, maybe you should go grab that wood and bring it over because we're going to cut that next, I don't have to do that with him.
whippersnapper.
When I get there the other day, he's got everything out of the boxes, and I was like, okay, I was kind of going to unbox it a little bit, but that's okay.
Oh, you wanted to get to do your unboxing?
Well, I wanted to get. Well, then we end up losing the set of screws, so I don't know what happened to those.
One at a time, man. One at a time.
I know, man.
Dennis
Dennis-
is volunteering to come on a show and talk
Thursday
about how to
night.
charge.
Thursday
Yeah,
night.
we got
I think
Thursday
it's
night
me,
for you,
and
bro.
it's wide open. And this is
and
way more
nice
planning
weather
than
for
I
him.
normally do.
Speaking of not planning ahead,
Right. Totally. I've been making crap up all my life. My only plan is I think I'm going to wake up this morning.
Teal can think
Tomorrow.
of more things to do.
Yeah,
off the
Dennis,
top of
if
his
you,
head than me.
it just never turns off.
If you're
You know why that
available,
is?
Thursday
Because
night,
you do a
hit
lot
me
of
up in
interviews.
Discord, Dennis. And we'll
I had a
do
guy-
some more battery stuff.
We were doing a captain's exam one time, and one of my buddies he did my what I should be saying in my interview, and I'm like, oh my god, he did me better than I could do me. I mean, he was like, I'm like, man, I wish I'd have recorded this, and, because he did perfect. I might have beat him out because I had some stuff on him. I just couldn't put it out there for him.
All right.
You know
Well, I
how it
think
goes.
that that's when we say you've come to the end of another Coffee and Ham radio show. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thanks for the super chats.
Thanks
for
for
the
everybody
comments
showing
and
up.
questions. in
Great
the chat.
show, y'all.
Thanks everybody
Thank
for being
y'all.
here. It was awesome.
Ape, you did a great job, son.
Later, everybody.
I don't know about that.